Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will tell you about the HOA that turned my property into a hotel. If you've ever driven 6 hours to your quiet lake house with a cooler of groceries and a dog that gets carsick, only to find a valet stand in your driveway and strangers handing you claim tickets for your own keys, you already understand the flavor of madness I stepped into. I thought I'd punched the wrong address into my GPS. Then I saw my blue canoe mounted over the entry like a decorative arch and heard music pulsing from inside what used to be my living room. A bellhop, an actual bellhop with a brass cart, asked, "Checking in for 2 nights?" and waved a tablet at me as if I were the intruder. I said something very articulate like, "That's my canoe." He cocked his head, chewing gum. "Great branding, right? Super rustic." He pointed at the sign hung from my porch rafters. Lakeside Suites, a community hotel. It was burnt wood with cursive letters, the kind of sign you'd pay for at a craft fair if you forgot you already had a last name. There were potted ferns where my porch swing should have been. There was a hostess station where my boot mat had always lived. And through my open door, I could see the long farm table my mom had refinished, now pushed against a wall and covered with a rubbery-looking buffet of steam pans. "I don't understand," I said. "This is my house." The bellhop blinked. "You must be with the Homeowners Association. The VIP codes are in the back end. Ask Corley." I didn't know any Corley. I knew the smell of pine and mothballs my house usually had when I'd open it in early summer, the slosh of lake water against the pilings under the dock, the mouse droppings I'd inevitably sweep off the windowsills. This smelled like industrial lemon cleaner and bacon. The main room had been gutted down to white shiplap and a bank of mini fridges. A chalkboard menu offered Dockside Benedict and Pine Pavilion mimosas. 2 women in polo shirts guided a couple holding hands toward the staircase. My staircase, the one with the creak on the 3rd step that used to announce me sneaking down for water as a kid. "Excuse me," I said again louder. "I own this house." "Hey!" came a chirp from behind the hostess stand. A woman popped out, a smile pinned to her face like a laminated badge. She had a honey bob and a necklace that said Aimer in tiny gold letters. "Welcome to the community hotel. What's the name on the reservation?" "Reservation? I'm not a guest. My name is on the deed." She froze for one invisible second. Then the smile returned, thinner. "Oh, you're the annual use owner." "I'm the owner, I said. "Full owner." Now the woman's eyes started scanning, looking for familiar ground. "Right. The HOA liaison explained we might have some legacy situations. We have a check-in at noon and we're at capacity, so let me just get Corley." She glided away, leaving a faint scent of grapefruit lotion that made me oddly furious. I stood there, half on my doormat, half on the new rug someone had chosen without my permission, and watched a stranger pluck one of my mom's ironstone bowls off the shelf to refill a fruit display. The back door, my back door, led to a deck that didn't exist last year. There were Adirondack chairs I would never have paid for, and a row of string lights strung like a mood halo. There was a sign on the deck that said hotel guests only. My dog Maple gave a low growl. A man in a bright blazer approached with the confident stride of a motivational speaker. He had a square jaw and delicate hands. "Corley, hi," he said, as if his name were a handshake. "You must be the owner who's been hard to reach." His grin was symmetrical but not friendly. "Congratulations. Your home is the anchor asset of our community experience." "Get out of my house," I said. He laughed. "I'm the project director. I know it's a lot to take in if you haven't attended the meetings. We've sent certified notices for months. We had unanimous approval at the special session. You'd have been so proud of your neighbors leaning into a new model, and this is the exciting part. We transformed vacation inefficiency into amenity equity. Think of your place as a boutique suite with upside. Upside? 1, your property value lifts because the area has curated hospitality. 2, you'll get pro-rata revenue share if you opt into Tier True North. He said this like I had ordered the tasting menu. 3, we've handled all the code work you'd never want to deal with. You should see the sprinkler riser. I think the only reason I didn't launch at him was that he said sprinkler riser, and my brain stalled. "Corley," I said, making myself slow, "I bought this house free and clear 12 years ago. The deed is in my name. I pay taxes, I pay insurance, and yes, I pay HOA dues for the private road and dock maintenance. I come up once a year because I have a job in the city and a life, and my reason for coming here is that this house is mine. You are running a hotel in my home." "It's not a hotel," he said smoothly. "It's a community hospitality amenity. The city has a pilot, The city doesn't have anything inside my walls, I said. Do you know what trespass means? A shadow flashed across his face, there and gone. Let's not do vocabulary drills. You should have been at the vote. The documents give the association authority to reallocate underutilized assets. The documents give you authority to fine me for leaving my trash can out, I said. Not to dismantle my kitchen. He spread his hands, bare of rings or calluses. If you're upset, I'll have someone from compliance reach out. But for now, our guests need to enjoy their stay. We have a wedding block checked into your second floor. Maple barked a sharp snap. The bride and groom turned and blinked at me, the bride's eyelashes like shutters. I'm not a yeller, not usually, but my voice came out jeweled and hard. Everyone out, now. You're in a private residence that is not open for commerce. Leave. The hostess rushed back. Please don't create a scene. We'll comp your first-year share as a goodwill gesture. I took out my phone, thumb shaking, and started recording. Then I called the non-emergency number for the county sheriff. I didn't shout. I did something worse. I used my quiet phone voice, the one that says, yes, I'll be fine in a minute, but we are all going to deal with the consequences first. While I waited, I walked through my own house like a detective in someone else's crime. They'd kept a few bones of my place. A painting my mom had made of the dock still hung over the doorway. No one noticed it didn't match the curated ferniness. But they'd ripped out the wood stove, replaced my kitchen with open shelving that looked good on a magazine cover and held exactly 12 plates, and painted over my chalk marks on the pantry door where my niece had charted her height every July. The old bedroom quilt I kept in the upstairs closet was folded at the foot of a bed that had new fake lodge pillows with bears on them. There were framed photos on the nightstands of smiling people I didn't know in a canoe that was absolutely my canoe, with the same gouge from when my cousin flipped it on a rock when we were in high school. By the time the deputy arrived, a small lobby of people had formed to watch the show. The deputy took one look at the sign, then at me with my deed pulled up in a PDF on my phone, and kept his expression somewhere between impassive and apologetic. He introduced himself as Dax. He walked with me through the house while Corley kept up a patter about agreements and majority consent. Dax called his supervisor, then called the code enforcement office because he wanted to know if a commercial operation even had permits here. Amenity, Corley corrected once under his breath. Amenity my shoes, I said. Code enforcement couldn't come until the next day. The deputy took a brief statement and told the wedding party they might want to find alternate lodging for the evening. The groom asked if they'd get a refund. The hostess said, "Of course," and shot me a look like I'd kicked a puppy. Corley kept repeating that I was violating the spirit of community hospitality. Dax said calmly that if the structure had been entered and altered without owner consent, we were looking at something beyond a disagreement. What if the HOA board consented? The hostess asked. I could see, like a watermark coming up under lemon juice, the entire shape of it. A board that had been annoyed for years that legacy owners like me used the neighborhood as minimally as possible, while they fought over short-term rental bans and street parking. Someone had gotten a bright idea that if they couldn't beat short-term rentals, they'd professionalize them, and the HOA would be the professional. They'd redefine common area, call my house an underutilized asset, and then bludgeon anyone who complained with the word community. They'd probably use terms like activation. They'd definitely use terms like pilot. I didn't know the names of the current board members. I'd moved from show up once a year to pay dues online to ignore the flyers, because meetings were scheduled at times I couldn't attend, and because the HOA had mostly been a nuisance about mailbox colors. That neglect landed the way old neglect lands, with a dull personal shame. But shame and anger are cousins. One hides, one hunts. I told Dax I was going to my car to get the file folder I kept there for this house. I've learned to keep original documents in multiple places after my apartment in the city had a pipe burst and turned a closet into soup. I keep paper and digital everything, and I keep lists of who to call. It's not survivalist. It's being raised by two school teachers who believed in staplers and exhibits. I pulled out the warranty deed, the title policy, the CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions I'd accepted when I bought the place, the bylaws, and a copy of the plat map with my lot outlined in yellow. I brought them in and spread them on the long table, pushing aside the hotel menu like it was a prop. A few neighbors had gathered. One, an older man with sun-creased eyes, hovered behind the crowd as if he'd been watching a storm roll in all afternoon and didn't know whether to go inside or film it. I said to Dax, "These are the association rules, current as of my closing. The HOA controls shared amenities like the dock, boat ramp, private road, and storage shed. It does not own any private lots or houses. It cannot reallocate private property. It can levy fines for rule violations after notice and opportunity to cure. It cannot enter my dwelling without my consent except in case of immediate emergency, which can't possibly include, say, installing a cappuccino machine." The hostess muttered, "It's dual boiler." Dax took a photo of the documents. "I'm not a judge," he said carefully, "but on the face of it, if they altered your structure and you didn't approve, that's not an HOA fine issue. It's trespass," I said, "and probably burglary if they entered with intent to commit theft. It's also conversion, which is taking property rights as if they're their own. Civil theft, too, because they're making money off my property without my consent. Depending on what they did with permits, it's probably also fraud." Corley sighed as if bored. "We have minutes, we have a vote, we have a legal memorandum." "Show me the memorandum," I said. "It's internal." The deputy asked him to produce the minutes. Corley said he didn't have the binder, that it was in the association office. The hostess said, "Do you want a scone?" As if carbs would heal us. The older neighbor edged closer. "Name's Bo," he said to me, voice low. I told them this wasn't going to end well. They said I was being negative. "Do you live on this street?" I asked. He nodded. "Since my wife and I married. She's buried up the road. They told me last month I'd have to take down my shed because it was non-conforming. The shed's been there since the Reagan administration." They're feeling bold. The deputy asked everyone to step outside so he could clear the building. I stood on my own porch, wind coming off the water, and watched guests drag their wheeled suitcases down my front steps. A little boy asked his dad why someone else got their house. The dad said, "Buddy, it's complicated," which is the exact lie adults tell when it's the opposite. Across the lawn, I saw someone with a device I recognized immediately because I own the same one. A battery camera pointed at the front. They'd placed it on my birdhouse. I made a mental note to check if my own indoor cameras had been moved. I keep a set unplugged most of the year, but ready to go for when storms roll through and I want to peek. Dax came back and said, "I can't resolve all this today. I've asked them to suspend operations until we can sort it out. If they refuse, call us. Tomorrow, code enforcement will come. If you can, secure anything that's yours from walking away." "Can I change my locks?" I asked. "Whoever has keys now is going to be unhappy," he said. "But you might want to," and gave me a look that wasn't legal advice but might as well have been a highlighter. After the deputy left, Corley tried one more time with the soft voice. "You'll look back on this as an overreaction. I'm trying to save you from yourself. You broke into my house," I said. "You took my mother's kitchen and turned it into a buffet line." "Amenity," he said, reflexive as a cough. "You're going to jail," I said, "and you'll pay me for every spoon." He laughed then, that perfect marketing laugh. "Sure, good luck with that." I told him I wouldn't need luck, and I've learned that when people think you're a once-a-year person, they assume you're also a once-a-year fighter. They don't expect you to fight every day, every hour, with the slow, unsexy movements that make a case into a wall. That evening, I took inventory with Bo's help. We walked room to room while Maple sniffed the baseboards like a detective. I took photos. I noted missing items, like the hand-carved shelf my grandfather made that was now refinished into a shabby chic bar shelf and bolted to a wall I hadn't authorized. I pulled the breaker to the makeshift espresso station so no one would be tempted to plug it in. I found a glossy binder in a new office nook labeled Lakeside Suites, which I took because it had my address on the cover and I was past asking permission. Inside, rate sheets, shift schedules, a spreadsheet of bookings with columns for HOA revenue split and owner retention if opted in. Next to owner for my property, there was a blank. Under consent, a green checkmark. I took a photo where the timestamp would be obvious. Bo leaned on his cane and said, "They tried to add a security camera under my eaves last week. Said it was for community safety." I asked them which community they meant, and they said, the brand. The brand. He looked at me sideways. "You mean to take this the long way or the loud way?" "Both," I said. The long way started with paper. That night I went through every email from the HOA for the past year. I found 6 that were titled Special Notice Community Activation Pilot. One had gone to my spam because the email newsletter service they used triggered my filters. The one I had actually received had 3 attachments and a link to a survey. The attachments were so generic they might have been templates downloaded from a forum. The survey asked questions like, would you support transforming underutilized community assets into revenue-positive amenities? And gave options like absolutely or different model please. There was no mention of specific lots. There was a line saying board may designate pilot sites. I also found 3 meeting notices that looked like the usual bore: a date, a time on a weekday afternoon, a hyperlink to documents available by request, and a statement that a quorum was expected. One of those emails had a link to minutes, but the link led to a 404 error. Another was a PDF of the agenda with the line, Hospitality Pilot, Action Item. No details, no properties listed. Certainly not my parcel ID number. I pulled my CC and Rs and read the parts I'd read 12 years ago when I asked my cousin, who's a paralegal, if these people could be trusted with anything beyond flower beds. The CC and Rs gave the association the power to maintain common areas, levy reasonable assessments, enforce architectural guidelines subject to notice, and adopt rules. They did not say anywhere that the board could take exclusive possession of a private dwelling or enter it without consent except to abate an imminent hazard. In the bylaws, I found the part about special meetings requiring notice with specificity. I found the part about the board needing a supermajority to alter common elements. I found the part about no board action being valid at meetings without a quorum and minutes properly recorded. I found a section about conflicts of interest requiring disclosure if a board member had any personal financial stake in a contract. I wrote a list on a legal pad titled Immediate. It said 1. Demand keys. 2. Change locks. 3. Demand all access codes be deactivated. 4. Cease and desist letter to HOA and Lakeside Suites operation. 5. Temporary restraining order to stop operations pending resolution. 6. Report to building code, fire marshal, health department. 7. Insurance. Notify my carrier that alterations occurred without consent. Potential claim for vandalism. 8. Police report for trespass and conversion. 9. County recorder search for any liens or filings without my knowledge. 10. Talk to a lawyer who knows HOA law and property rights. Seems like a lot, Bo said, eating a stale cookie we found in my pantry that the hotel had spared. It's Tuesday, I said. By Friday, they're going to wish it was a lot less. The loud way started Wednesday morning. I woke up to the thump of a truck door and looked out to see 2 men in contractor shirts unloading boxes of mini shampoos, because apparently someone planned to try again. I stepped onto the porch, phone already recording. No work today, I called. This property is closed. You're trespassing. Ma'am, we have a work order, one of them said. He held up a clipboard like a shield. From who? I asked. The association. Do you see an association living here? I asked. You see me. I own this house. If you take one more step, I'm calling the sheriff. They didn't, but they did make phone calls. 20 minutes later, a woman in a blazer arrived along with the hostess. The woman had a legal pad and the posture of someone who went to bed with statute books. I'm Nadine, the HOA's counsel, she said. We need to talk. We should, I said. Let's talk on the record. I invited her to sit on the porch bench that used to be my mom's church pew. I set my phone between us like a salt shaker. Here's the order of operations for this conversation, I said. 1. You explain the legal basis under which your clients believe they have the right to take possession of my home. 2. You produce the vote you're relying on. 3. You show me the contract with these workers and the permitting for the work you've done inside my home. 4. You hand over access codes to anything you installed. I smiled, all teeth. I'll go first. I laid out my deed, my CC and Rs, my bylaws, and the law I'd printed out at dawn from the county website. Trespass, burglary definition, conversion, civil theft statute that allowed for treble damages if someone knowingly took property, the state's lodging regulations, which are very clear that you can't operate a hotel without a license, the fire code requiring sprinklers for places with multiple guest rooms, and the health code for food service. I said, in addition, your operation is in violation of zoning. This is a residential area. There is no variance posted. There is no conditional use permit. There is a sign on my porch that might as well be a confession. Nadine listened, eyes making an unreadable pattern. The hostess shifted like she needed to use the bathroom. Nadine finally said, Our position is that the association's governing documents allow the board to create amenities for the common benefit and to regulate nuisance behavior. Vacant or underutilized properties invite vagrancy and blight. My house is not blighted, I said. It's a vacation home. People have those. Your lack of attendance at meetings created a vacuum, she said mildly. My lack of attendance did not transfer title, I said. She glanced at the door as if she'd rather be talking to the wood than to me. It's also our position that you received proper notice of the pilot selection and did not object. I objected today, I said. Now provide the vote. She opened her legal pad and read from typed notes. Special session on March 21st. Quorum established. Motion to designate 3 underutilized assets for the pilot was approved unanimously by those present. Where does it say which assets? I asked. In the executive session minutes, she said, which are sealed. Privileged, she said. I'm a member, I said. I'm allowed to see minutes of actions affecting my property. And by the way, the CC and Rs require notice of any proposed action materially affecting a member's rights. Did you send a letter stating that this house, this parcel number, would be used as a hotel? Amenity, the hostess whispered like an exhale. Nadine took a breath. We sent notices. You sent generic flyers, I said. I didn't consent. You did work inside my home. You replaced my fixtures, removed my appliances, drilled holes for your wires. You used my linens in commercial lodging. You collected money. We patted the mattress, the hostess said, as if they'd left me with a gift. I said, Nadine, I'm going to give you a formal demand. You will immediately cease all operations in my home and on my lot. You will return any keys and codes, remove your staff and equipment, after making an inventory with me, and you will provide me a copy of your insurance and the permits you pulled. You will do this today. I will also be filing for a temporary restraining order. If you enter this property again without my permission or a court order, I will treat it as a criminal matter. And if we don't? Nadine asked. Then, I said, you'll wish this was just a civil issue. She stood, straightened her blazer, and looked at the hostess. No further occupancy, she said. Stand down. The hostess looked relieved, then anxious. What about the schedule? Cancel it, Nadine said. We'll sort the rest later. They left. Maple wagged her tail as if she'd treat a squirrel. Bo laughed a dusty little laugh. You don't shoot for center mass, he said. You shoot for the wallet. Both, I said again. That afternoon, I called a lawyer named Zeke who had, according to a friend, made an HOA cry in court and then send fruit baskets to the people they'd harassed. He called me back within an hour. I laid out everything. He said, wow, 3 times, and I wish I were surprised once. First we get a TRO, he said. Then we take depositions. We serve discovery for all communications, meeting notices, minutes, votes, contracts with vendors, and any documents remotely suggesting they had authority. We also notify the state's Consumer Protection Division because they operated lodging without a license. Separate track, same pressure. And we file a police report, which you did. Good. This is not just civil. I want them in jail, I said, surprising myself with how flat it sounded. I want them to pay. If what you're telling me is accurate, he said, some of them might absolutely meet elements of crimes, especially if there's forgery or falsification of votes. At minimum, criminal mischief for the structural changes, possibly theft. And if anyone took a cut from contracts, that's its own mess. What about the people who stayed? I asked. I don't want to be a monster and kick out a family in the middle of the night. You're not the monster, he said. They're innocent third parties. That's why we do this with the sheriff and code. I made myself another list titled Loud. I called the fire marshal's office and reported an unlicensed lodging establishment operating in a single-family residence with multiple guest rooms, no posted evacuation plan, and no visible sprinkler heads. The operator on the line went very quiet and then took my address. I called the county health department to report food service without a permit. I called the building department to report unpermitted interior alterations. When you've been told for years to keep your head down and not make waves, the first time you sound like a bureaucratic siren is a little intoxicating. I also checked the county recorder's site and found, to my horror, that someone had recorded an amenity easement against my lot 2 months ago. The document said that I, as the owner, granted the association a non-exclusive easement for ingress, egress, maintenance, and hospitality activation. The signature block had my name typed and a signature that, while passable at a glance, was absolutely not mine. The notary line listed a name and commission number. The notary stamp was crisp. My hands went cold in a hot way. I took a screenshot. I printed the page. I drove to the recorder's office because I wanted someone to look me in the face while they explained how my house got hijacked. Bo insisted on coming because he said he wanted to watch the unspooling. The clerk listened, pulled up the document, compared it to my driver's license signature, and made a face that said, "I'm not legally allowed to say bad words at my desk." She got her supervisor. He looked at the signature and then at the notary seal and said, "We'll flag this for possible fraud." He gave me the form to contest and asked if he could make a copy of my ID. He also gave me, unprompted, the public contact info for the county's fraud unit. When we came out into the sunlight, Bo shook his head. "If they forged your signature, that's not silly politics anymore. That's jail." "Good," I said. On the way back, we drove by the association office. It was in a little building near the mail kiosk, painted the approved neutral that always looked slightly ill. There were cars out front. I parked. Bo said, "You want backup?" "You're my Greek chorus," I said. "Stay." Inside, an administrative assistant with a high ponytail and a nervous smile looked up. "Can I help you?" "I need the names of the board members," I said, "and I need to see the minutes for the special meeting on March 21st and the executive session where my property was designated." "We don't release executive session minutes," she said. "I'm a member," I said. "I have the right to inspect certain records. Also, please give me contact info for the notary whose seal appears on this easement." I held up the printout. She went pale. "I'll get someone." The someone was a man I recognized instantly from an HOA email header I had glanced at last year and ignored. The president, a guy named Harv who wore polo shirts like a second skin and had the jaw clench of someone who chewed nicotine gum without chewing gum. "We're not giving you anything without a records request," he said, in writing. "Great," I said. "Here you go." I'd typed one in my car in the 5 minutes it took to find a parking spot. He took it like it was a dead thing. "Also, Harv," I said, "did you authorize a recording against my property claiming I granted you a hospitality easement?" His eyes flicked. He should have gone into poker with those eyes. "All recordings are public documents. We comply with the law." "Did you sign for me?" I asked. "Did anyone watch me sign?" "I'm not your secretary," he said. "You're not my anything," I said. "You'll have that clarity reinforced soon. For now, do not set foot on my property. Do not send workers. Do not call guests about reservations. If you do, your next conversation will be with someone who carries a badge and doesn't care about your community brand." He tried on a tolerant smile. "You're overreacting." "Ask your lawyer if I am," I said and left. When I got back to the house, Zeke called to say he'd drafted the TRO. He said he'd also spoken with a detective who was very interested in the idea that someone filed a false easement with a notary seal. "He's sending someone to you this afternoon for a sworn statement," Zeke said. "Also, heads up, Consumer Protection is sending an investigator to the site. Be polite, don't editorialize, just show them the sign." "Should I take the sign down?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "It's evidence." At 4, a detective named Morrow arrived with a notebook and a camera. He had the calm of a man who enjoyed reading reports and then arresting people because of them. He took my statement. He asked to see the changes to the house. He photographed the cappuccino station, the mounted canoe, the rekeyed lockbox I hadn't authorized. He photographed the binder with its revenue columns. He asked me 100 precise questions. Dates, emails, what I knew, what I inferred, who said what, who was present. He narrowed his eyes at the easement printout. "I'm going to pull the notary's book," he said, half to himself. "We'll see who supposedly appeared." At 6, a woman from Consumer Protection showed up with a badge and a folder. She toured the amenity and made small clucking noises that I found very soothing. No lodging license, no health permit, no display of occupancy limits, no posted emergency plan, no ADA compliance, she said, checking boxes. "If you feel like you're overreacting," she added almost cheerfully, "you're not." Bo sat on the porch with Maple while the sun went down. He told me that his wife used to sit in that same spot and watch summer storms roll across the lake, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder like it was a recipe. He told me that after she died, the HOA sent him a notice that his porch railing needed repainting. They were right, he said. Didn't mean they had to be heartless about it. He looked at the string lights and the curated ferns and the sign with its cute burnt wood letters and said, "They've been trying to make this neighborhood into something it never was and something it doesn't want to be. Fancy words for stealing." I told him I'd bring the neighborhood back to what it was supposed to be. People who mow their own lawns, take pies to each other, And don't break into a widow's shed to measure its roofline. And, I added, they're going to pay through the nose. He grinned. You talk like my late wife, science teacher, precise when she was mad. I didn't sleep. Logistics, not adrenaline. If an HOA hates anything, it's losing control. If it craves anything, it's paperwork. I would drown them in their own pond. At dawn, I drafted 3 letters: a cease and desist to the HOA and their hospitality arm, a demand to preserve evidence, and a notice to their insurer about vandalism and unauthorized modifications. I emailed and sent certified copies because some board members only respect green ink signatures or a postal knock. At 8, the fire marshal looked up and said no, posting a red occupancy suspended notice. At 10, my lawyer Zeke texted. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. I taped it beside the red notice and hand-delivered another to the association office. At 11, the detective called, "Come look at a notary log." In the spiral book, the date of my supposed amenity easement listed 2 signers, my forged name and a witness, Corley. The detective asked if I was okay. "I'm focused," I said. On the way home, HOA counsel emailed, "We propose a settlement to move the pilot forward." I replied we could discuss paying to restore my house and resignations. Bo and I found a lockbox key on my rail and sealed it as evidence. Harv texted, "Be reasonable, return our keys." I replied, "You don't have keys at my house." Consumer Protection opened a case and told me to report any hush money offers. Zeke served discovery on the HOA and a new LLC, Lake Collective Hospitality, registered to Harv. Emails, minutes, contracts, vendor deals, including a contractor named Knox. Neighbors sent camera and community Wi-Fi stories. Momentum shifted. 48 hours after the TRO, cruisers rolled in. The notary was arrested for falsifying a certificate, Corley for aiding forgery, Knox for unlicensed work, and a phony inspection stamp. Warrants hit the HOA server and the LLC books. 3 days later, a preliminary injunction froze hospitality across the subdivision, and a receiver named Tamsin took over, suspending the pilot and ordering locks, codes, and devices returned. From the servers, Harv wrote, "Make it look shared, language matters," and Corley labeled me Legacy Annual. Knox griped about sprinklers. Someone promised a rubber stamp at code. The notary flipped, admitting she'd never seen me sign. When Harv wandered in, deputies met him with a warrant. Zeke widened our civil case: civil theft with treble damages, conversion, trespass to chattels, emotional distress, punitive damages. We found the LLC's agreement. Harv 34%, Corley 21%, 2 silent board members. Charges landed. Harv for forgery, burglary, theft, criminal mischief, conspiracy. Corley pled and cooperated. Knox pled after a worker's text showed he'd been told to walk it off. HOA counsel Nadine, who had warned them to get owner consent, resigned and brought me my mother's ironstone. At trial, the DA said burglary is entering to commit a crime. Jurors watched my video of a bellhop in my doorway, and the marshal saying, "No," the notary testified. Bo described cameras under his eaves. Verdict: guilty on burglary, theft, mischief. Harv got 3 years, Corley 2, Knox 18 months, and restitution. The notary lost her commission and got probation. With that, the civil case settled. Full restoration at my contractor's rates. Treble and punitive damages. Attorney's fees. Personal liability attached. Liens hit Harv's rental and boat. The association funded 5 years of homeowner rights education. Bo became board president, reversed petty fines, and led a workday where we sanded his railing and ate pie at my farm table. Imani's committee removed devices and passed a consent-first bylaw with 98% approval. My kitchen returned, wood stove, pantry door with my niece's height marks, canoe back to floating. We held a pie night and traded stories instead of reservation codes. I took my canoe out at sunrise the day Harv reported. The house looked like itself again. Quiet. Asked about the settlement, I said, "Keep my property." A porch swing was my one indulgence. If you see a valet stand where your mat should be, don't swallow it. Call people with badges and draw lines until they hold. House means house. Owner means owner. Consent means consent. Amenity means dock, not hotel. Big mistake, HOA. Good luck always. Friends, thank you. See you soon.